Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating, slightly wild story of Tesla's Cybercab. We're going to unpack the history, the tech, and the sheer scale of Elon Musk's absolutely massive bet on a purpose-built robotaxi. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't even have a steering wheel. It's a radical shift in how we think about getting from point A to point B. And whether it plays out exactly as promised or not, the engineering and the economic strategies going on behind the scenes here, they're just absolutely captivating.
To make sense of this whole shift, we're going to follow a quick roadmap today. 1. The self-driving dream. 2. The AI turning point. 3. Designing the Cybercab. 4. Unboxing the factory. 5. The data advantage. And finally, 6. The road ahead.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the self-driving dream and 90 years of trying to remove the driver.
You see, the history here runs deep. Really deep. We're talking way back in 1939 with Norman Bell Geddes' Futurama exhibit, where literally 27 million people saw this wild vision of cars guided by electromagnetic highway fields. Fast forward a bit to 1986, and Carnegie Mellon's NavLab is stuffing early, bulky computers into a Chevy van just to get it to drive 20 miles per hour. The modern era, though, that really kicked off when Stanford won the DARPA Grand Challenge back in 2005. All of that historical momentum leads right up to Tesla's 2016 Master Plan Part D, which is where they officially laid out the promise of an income-generating, fully autonomous fleet.
And that brings us right into Section 2, the AI turning point, where we shift from code to compute.
So for decades, early self-driving cars basically failed because they relied on rules-based logic. Engineers had to sit there and literally hand-code a specific rule for every single situation. But think about the real world for a second. What happens when a plastic bag blows across the road while a kid is chasing a dog? The system completely breaks down, right? Because there isn't a pre-written rule for that crazy edge case. Modern self-driving completely flips the script. It relies on neural networks. Instead of writing rules, the system actually learns to drive by processing millions of real-world examples. It's powered by the exact same revolution in GPU compute that made things like ChatGPT possible. Now, okay, we do have to contrast this exciting AI leap with reality for a second. Back in April of 2019, Elon Musk famously predicted we'd see 1 million robotaxis on the road by the year 2020. Well, that obviously didn't happen. It highlights a long, well-documented history of missed deadlines at Tesla. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand. Even though the timelines have slipped by years, that underlying technological thesis, the idea that neural networks would eventually figure this out, has been steadily advancing in the background the entire time. Which leads us to Section 3, designing the Cybercab and the hardware of a high-stakes gamble. Those massive AI advancements we just talked about actually dictated the physical shape of this radical new car. According to Walter Isaacson's biography, Tesla's design chief tried to include a backup steering wheel in the early concepts. And the logic was pretty sound. Appease the regulators while you wait for full autonomy approvals. But Musk firmly rejected it. He refused to build a halfway car, stating they were not going to design some sort of amphibian frog. By ripping out the steering wheel entirely, they're taking a massive all-in risk on their software, because if the software fails, the car is literally useless. So what did they build? The Cybercab. It's targeting a retail price of under 30 grand, launching on their new AI4 compute chip, and it is incredibly unique. We're looking at a two-seater, teardrop coupe that's 14 feet long. It's got these butterfly doors with 0 external handles and a paint-free, molded polyurethane body. Inside, no pedals. Just a massive 20.5-inch center display. It runs on a surprisingly small 35 kilowatt-hour battery, but targets a super efficient 5.5 miles per kilowatt-hour, getting roughly 200 miles of range. Oh, and perhaps the craziest part? There's no plug. It completely relies on 19 kilowatt ultra-wideband inductive charging. I mean, it makes sense, right? A robot without a driver can't physically plug itself in. Now, if you're sitting there thinking a two-seater seems wildly impractical, the data actually says otherwise. Peer-reviewed studies of Uber and Lyft show that roughly 90% of ride-hailing trips carry just 1 to 2 passengers. The average is actually around 1.3 people per trip, so Tesla just built exactly what was needed for the dominant use case. By cutting out the wasted space and extra seats, they dramatically drive down the physical cost of the vehicle. And for larger groups, they just plan to use the rest of their standard fleet, like the Model Y.
And that brings us to Section 4, unboxing the factory and revolutionizing manufacturing scale. Because designing a cheap car on a computer is only half the battle, right? Let's see how they actually plan to physically build this thing.
To pull this off, Tesla is tossing out the traditional assembly line that Henry Ford pioneered. Instead, they're using what they call an unboxed process. This means they build major subassemblies, the front, the rear, the battery floor, the side panels, all in parallel, simultaneously at different stations. And then there's one single final marriage step where they essentially snap all the modular pieces together at the very end. Kind of like a giant puzzle.
This unboxed method completely changes the economics. Compared to a standard assembly line, they're looking at a 40% smaller factory footprint, a 30% drop in labor costs, and the big one, a 50% reduction in overall production cost. A huge chunk of that savings actually comes from that polyurethane body we talked about. By baking the gold color directly into the plastic injection molds, they get to completely skip the paint shop. And in the auto industry, paint shops are notoriously one of the most expensive, bottlenecked areas of any factory.
And the scale they're aiming for here is just breathtaking. Since Tesla is self-certifying the Cybercab under federal safety standards, they're bypassing the Safety Administration's typical 2,500 vehicle cap for cars without manual controls. That means they are targeting a massive production ramp-up. We're talking 5,000 units a week by late 2026, with an ultimate goal of building one single car every 10 seconds.
All right, Section 5, the data advantage, focusing on millions of miles and fleet learning. Hardware and factories are awesome, but the software is what actually drives the car. Let's see what really fuels this whole operation.
Right now, the industry is split into two totally distinct camps. On one side, you have Waymo. They are the undisputed current leader in paid Robotaxi rides, doing about 500,000 rides a week. But they use a fleet of roughly 3,000 retrofitted Jaguars loaded with highly expensive LiDAR and radar sensors. Then on the other side, you've got Tesla. They are betting the entire farm on a cheap, vision-only approach using standard cameras that just mimic human eyes. Because cameras are so cheap, Tesla can scale this hardware across the more than 9 million profitable electric vehicles they've already sold. And that massive installed base gives Tesla this frankly staggering number, 8.4 billion supervised full self-driving miles. One Tesla AI exec literally called it a Niagara Falls of data pouring into their servers. To put that into perspective, Waymo's cumulative autonomous miles are estimated to be somewhere around 100 million. Tesla just completely dwarfs the competition in the sheer volume of real-world edge cases they've collected.
This real-world fleet learning is exactly what powers their newest version 14 end-to-end neural net. Whenever a human driver encounters a tricky situation and takes over the wheel, that data feeds right back into the system to train the entire fleet. Competitors are basically hoping that synthetic data, photorealistic simulations generated by platforms like NVIDIA's Cosmos, might eventually close that massive data gap. Meanwhile, Elon Musk has publicly offered to license Tesla's software to legacy automakers. But so far, major players like Ford and GM have passed, deciding to either develop their own in-house systems or partner up with Waymo.
Now, at the end of the day, safety is the ultimate metric. Based on Tesla's newly separated safety report, they claim to see one major crash every 5.1 million supervised miles on their self-driving software. Compare that to 2.3 million miles from manually driven Teslas and roughly 660,000 miles for the US national average. Now, we definitely have to caveat this. Safety researchers are quick to point out that Tesla essentially sets its own definitions for what counts as a crash and what counts as an engaged trip. But even keeping those caveats in mind, the internal comparison between the software and manual Tesla drivers is a huge jump.
Finally, let's bring it home with Section 6, the road ahead. We're going to look at commercial pilots and the real-world economics to see why this actually matters to your wallet.
Well, while the Cybercab factory is still ramping up, the service itself is already becoming a reality. Tesla is running a commercial paid pilot program right now in Austin, Texas. Interestingly, they aren't using the Cybercab yet. They're using modified Model Ys operating completely unsupervised. These specific cars even have newly engineered camera washer jets to make sure the vision system stays perfectly clean, since, there's no human driver there to wipe it off. And they have plans to quickly expand this unsupervised service to cities like Dallas, Miami, and Las Vegas.
And this all boils down to the ultimate economic goal of this entire AI and manufacturing effort. Today, the average all-in cost of owning a vehicle in the US is about 77 cents a mile. Rideshare costs? Easily over $1 a mile. Tesla's stated goal is to drop the cost of transportation all the way down to just 20 cents a mile. If they can actually pull that off at scale, it fundamentally shifts the entire math of daily life, potentially making personal car ownership completely optional for millions of us.
So as Tesla navigates its well-documented history of missed deadlines to try and pull off arguably the biggest bet in the history of the auto industry, the ultimate question to leave you with today is a personal one. When the time comes, are you ready to trust a neural network, let go of the control, and get into a car with absolutely no steering wheel? It's a wildly fascinating future to watch unfold. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.